Chapter 22 of Finn the Wolfhound by Alec John Dawson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 22. A Break-Up in Arcadia. Jess's struggles on the day of the dingo fight naturally retarded the healing of her wound, but before the week was out, Bill was able to remove his rude stitches, and the great gash showed every sign of healing cleanly. Yet, in spite of the kangaroo hound's wonderful hardihood and her advantages in the matter of pure, healing air, almost another week had passed before she was able to move about round the camp, and a full 10 days more were gone before she cared to resume her old activities. During all this while, Finn played the part of very loyal and watchful protector. He had much desired to follow up the trail of the 2 dingoes that escaped him, but he would not leave Jess long enough at a time to make this possible. The wild folk of the bush, situated within a mile of the camp, however, became as much accustomed to his presence as though he were in truth one of themselves, so thoroughly and constantly did he patrol their range during his guardianship of the wounded hound. In this period he learned to know every twig in that strip of country, and practically every creature that lived or hunted there. The snake folk, brown, tiger, carpet, diamond, black, and death adder, he came to know them all from a very respectful distance, and he studied their habits and methods of progression and of hunting with the deepest interest. For instance, on one occasion, towards evening, Finn saw a carpet snake pin a big kangaroo rat close to a fallen log. With a swiftness which Finn's sharp eyes were unable to follow exactly, the snake twisted 2 coils of his shining body round the marsupial and crushed the little beast to death. Then slowly, and as though the process gave him great satisfaction, the snake worked his coils downward from the head to the tail of the kangaroo rat, crunching its body flat and breaking all its joints. Then very slowly the snake took its victim's head between its jaws, and advancing first one jaw and then the other, 1/8 of an inch at a time, very gradually swallowed the whole animal, the operation occupying altogether a full 10 minutes. When the snake had quite finished, Finn leaped upon it from his hiding-place, killing the creature with one snap of his jaws immediately behind the head. Finn's front teeth actually met in the tail of the kangaroo rat, which had only reached thus far in its progress. Indeed, the tip of the tail was still in the snake's mouth at the time, and Finn was perfectly aware that in this condition the big reptile was not very dangerous. Bill was just dismounting beside the gunyah when Finn arrived, trailing just about 12 feet of gorged snake beside him. But this was only one small incident among the daily, almost hourly, adventures and lessons which came to the Wolfhound during this period of Jess's convalescence. He actually caught a half-grown koala, or native bear, one hot afternoon when Jess was beginning to stroll about the clear patch, and finding that the queer little creature offered no fight, but only swayed its tubby body to and fro, moaning and wailing and generally behaving like a distressed child, Finn made no attempt to kill it, but simply took firm hold of the loose, furry skin about its thick neck, and dragged it, complaining piteously, through the bush to the gunyah, where he deposited it gingerly upon the ground for Jess's inspection. Bill found the 2 hounds playing with the koala on his return to camp that night. It was a one-sided kind of game, for the bear only sat up on his haunches between the hounds, rocking to and fro, and sobbing and moaning with grotesque, appealing pathos, while Finn and Jess gambolled about him, occasionally toppling him over with a thrust of their muzzles, and growling angrily at him till he sat up again, when they appeared quite satisfied. Bill sat on his horse and shook with laughter as he watched the game. He thought of killing the bear, for there is a small bounty given on bears' heads. But long laughter moved his good nature to ignore the bounty, and after a while he called Jess off and drove the bear away into the scrub. He did not call Finn, because that was unnecessary. Finn withdrew immediately upon Bill's approach. It was perhaps a week after the bear-baiting episode, when for several days Jess had been following her man by day in the same manner as before her hurt, that both hounds began to notice that Bill was undergoing a change of some sort. He never talked to them now. He took not the smallest notice of Finn, and rarely looked at Jess. When she approached him of an evening he would gruffly bid her lie down, and once he thrust her from him with his foot when she had nosed close up to him beside the fire. Jess had vague recollections of similar changes in her man having occurred before this time, and she had vague uncomfortable stirrings which told her that further change of some sort was imminent. This made the kangaroo hound restless and uneasy, and before long her uneasiness communicated itself to Finn, who immediately began to think of the worst things he knew of, men in leathern coats, iron-barred cages, and the like. All this made the Wolfhound more shy than ever where Bill was concerned, and more like a creature of the real wild in all his movements and general demeanour. He slept a little farther from the gunyah now, and relied almost entirely upon his own hunting for food. Still, he had no wish to leave the camp, and regarded Jess as his fast friend. One evening the now definitely surly and irritable Bill devoted half an hour to counting and recounting some money in the light of the campfire. He had visited the station homestead that day, and drawn his pay from the manager. "Ger outer that, damn ye!" he growled at poor Jess when she crept towards him with watchful, affectionate eyes. So Jess got out, to the extent of 12 yards, with the mark of one of Bill's heavy boots on her glossy flank. She bore not a trace of malice, and would have cheerfully fought to the death for her man at that moment, but she was full of vague distress and whimpering uneasiness, of dim, unhappy presentiments. And in all this Finn shared fully, though without the personal intensity which marked Jess's feeling by reason of her great love of the man. But the uneasiness and the presentiments were shared by the Wolfhound, and he dreamed vividly that night of red-hot irons, the smell of tigers, of wire-bound whiplashes, and the panic sense of being caged. In the morning Bill would hardly take the trouble to prepare a breakfast for himself, and the clothes he wore were not those that Finn had always seen him in before. Bill presently tied up the hanging door of the gunyah and mounted his horse. Jess and Finn followed him as their wont was, but their hearts were sad, and Bill's glowering looks gave them no encouragement. For almost 7 miles they followed Bill, and then, after leaping a low dog-leg fence, they found themselves in the one wide street of Nargoola Township. Bill cantered slowly down the empty road till he came to the First Nugget Hotel, and there he drew rein and finally hitched his horse's bridle to a veranda post. Then he strode across the veranda and disappeared within the hotel, and Jess remembered many things. Finn remained with Jess a few yards from the horse, waiting. But whereas the experienced Jess lay down in the dust, Finn stood erect and watchful beside her. He was already rather nearer to the house than he cared about, and the air was heavy with the scent of man and his works. Finn was acutely uncomfortable, and told Jess so as plainly as he could, with a hint as to the advantages of returning to the bush. But Jess urged patience, and tucked her nose under one of her hind legs. Presently 1 or 2 men came straggling down the street, and made overtures to Finn, after standing and gazing upon him with admiring astonishment, and slowly piecing together his connection with Bill and Jess through the horse. Bush folk have a way of arriving at their knowledge of people through horseflesh. "My oath!" exclaimed one of them. "He's got a touch of the Tasmanian blood in him, all right. I guess old man Hall's pets have been busy back in the hills there. Wonder how Bill got a holt of him." And then, with every sign of deferential friendliness, the man endeavoured to approach Finn. But though Jess lay still, showing only pointed indifference where the men were concerned, Finn leaped backward like a stag, and kept a good score of paces between the menfolk and himself. The man who made the remark about Finn and Tasmanian blood had never seen the zebra wolf, as it is sometimes called, owing to the stripes which often occur in its coat, or he would not have thought of Finn in this connection. The Tasmanian wolf is a heavy, long beast, with a truncated muzzle, short legs, a thin taper tail, and a very massive shoulder and neck. Wolves of this type have been known to keep 6 hunting dogs absolutely at bay, and finally to escape from them. Their appearance is more suggestive of the hyena than of any such symmetrically beautiful lines as those of Finn's graceful, racy build. But by reason of his great height and size, Finn was strange to the Nargoola man, and he, having heard of old Jacob Hall's strange importations from Tasmania, at once linked the two kinds of strangeness together in his mind, and saw only further reason for so doing in the fact that he was quite unable to get within a dozen paces of touching the Wolfhound. Out of consideration for the patient Jess, Finn endured the discomfort of waiting beside the first nugget all through that day, though he never ventured to sit down even for a moment. There, among the man-smells and the threatening shadows of the house, each one of which he regarded as the possible headquarters of a circus, the possible home of a professor. But when evening set in, and Jess still showed no signs of forsaking her post, Finn could endure it no longer, and told his friends several times over that he must go, that he would return to the camp in the bush and wait there. The nuzzling touches of Jess's nose said plainly, "Wait a bit yet. What's your hurry?" But Finn was in deadly earnest now. He refused to be restrained even by a little whimpering appeal, in which Jess made every use she could of the craft of her sex, showing exaggerated signs of weakness and distress. "Well, then, why not come with me?" barked Finn in reply, fidgeting about her on his toes. Jess pleaded for delay, and licked his nose most persuasively. But Finn's mind was made up, and he turned his shoulder coldly upon the bitch, while still waiting for some sign of yielding on her part. But Jess was bound to her post by ties far stronger than any consideration of her comfort or well-being, and as a matter of fact 40 Wolfhounds would not have moved her from that veranda alive. Also, of course, she had not Finn's violent distaste for the neighbourhood of man and his works. She had never been in a circus, she had never been suddenly awakened from complete trust in mankind to knowledge of the existence of mad man-beasts with hot iron bars. So Finn would have told her. In the end, Finn gave a cold bark of displeasure and trotted off into the gathering twilight, leaping the fence and plunging into the bush the moment he had passed the last house of the township. Half an hour later he killed a fat bandicoot, who was engaged at that moment in killing a tiny marsupial mouse. A quarter of an hour after that, Finn lay down beside the ashes of the fire before the gunyah, his kill between his forelegs. He rested there for a few minutes, and then, tearing off its furry skin in strips, devoured the greater part of the bandicoot before settling down for the night. As much, that is, as he ever did settle down these days. His eyes were not often completely closed, less often at night, perhaps, than in the daytime. But he dozed now, out there in the clear patch where the gunyah stood, free of all thoughts of men and cages. And the bush air seemed sweeter than ever to him to-night, after his brief stay in the man-haunted township. End of chapter 22.